Hello, everybody, and welcome to And Action episode 42. I'm Tommy DiNucci, as always, here with Mikey Messier. We've got a very exciting show planned for you. We missed you last week. I know I missed you. I'm sure Mikey missed you too. But we're back. We're better than ever. It's a big week, Mike. Not only are we going to be talking about The Florist, which is a television pilot that I produced last week, but it's also Johnny and Clyde Week. The movie that I made starring Megan Fox will be coming out Friday, May 5th. So a lot to get into. Let's jump right into it. How you been, Mike? What's new?
Well, Tommy, I've been pretty good. I've been working on my paintings. I did have a screening at the Atlantic Theaters here in Jacksonville, Florida, of Blood Sugar Sedace, which is a film of mine. That's the poster, by the way.
Oh, wow.
People actually can find that on YouTube, the whole thing. I want to say that for our Spanish-speaking friends, Tommy, the film that you made actually comes out on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th.
How about that?
So no better way to celebrate Cinco de Mayo than watching your movie. And I'm looking forward to that. Megan Fox is in it, of course, and a great cast. And also you've been shooting a pilot this past week while I've been painting. So, I mean, I think we're both been pretty busy gentlemen. I can't figure out which hand to turn upside down, buddy.
You know what's interesting, Mike? You held that one of the face upside down.
Yeah,
One, I think it's actually cooler upside down. Maybe it should be presented that way.
it's
Just
more haunting.
Yeah, just a thought, like he's hanging by his legs or something.
What if I walked around like this and used it as a mask?
I think you'd get a lot of attention. I'm not sure if it would be the kind of attention you're seeking, but you'd get attention. So let's get into it, Mike. Last week, I worked on The Florist, which was kind of a fun project that we talked about this a little bit during our episode 41, No Hard Feelings. We talked about how it's important sometimes when you're throwing every single project against the wall, nothing's sticking.
Right.
None of the plans that you really had are going your way. It's important to have a side project that's kind of just all you, and it's just a passion project, something that you work on it when you have time, when you can get to it. Don't stress yourself out about it too much. Don't make it something that's another headache to travel with, but make it a project that you can kind of work on when you're feeling like everything else is just sucking at life.
Sure.
And that was kind of The Florist. I co-wrote this and worked with Glenn Ciano very, very closely. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard about Glenn Ciano. But if you're not, Glenn's a collaborator of mine for many years. He's actually one of the first guys to kind of, I'd say, take me under his wing in some ways in the business. Glenn's my big brother type. He's a good 10 years older than me. So we've got that kind of like big bro kinship, and he loves all the same things I love. We're both fans of pop culture and film, and a lot of creatively, a lot of the same things that we kind of vibe with and connect to, we share. So Glenn and I kind of, like in the movie Step Brothers, after meeting each other, it wasn't too long where we became like really, really close. And really now, we're like family. So to have a project like that and get to work on with Glenn, that was really special.
And to cross-reference, Glenn directed Incubus, which is the Robert Englund movie you acted in, and as one of the security guards, I believe, and that was episode 7. And I think the last time we were on air live, Glenn made kind of a cameo at the end, I believe.
He did. Glenn and I have pretty much ongoing. Every Monday we get together and work on whatever project it is that we've got going at the time. And for whatever reason, I think it's because we were prepping for The Florist. He came over on a Tuesday. But yeah, Glenn and I spent a lot of time together, and this was our project when, we didn't kind of know whether to zig or to zag. We said, all right, let's crack open The Florist. And that's really how it started, right down to the concept. We thought it would really be we thought it would be really cool to tell a story about, a father and son story. Both Glenn and I have a very close relationship with our fathers.
Yes.
So, telling a father and son story was something that we always wanted to do. But we said, well, what's an interesting twist that we could put on this father and son story? And everybody knows that I've made quite a few, violent type movies, crime type movies, movies that have the blood and the guts and the, the action. Glenn, same thing for the most part. He started in the horror genre, so he's no stranger to that level of violence in his films. So we wanted to kind of make this story with heart, like this violent, dark story that also had heart and was also funny at times, even though, the images that you're seeing on the screen might not be the most friendly images. So we told a story called The Florist, which is about a father and son who, the son, played by myself, is a little too old to be living at home still.
Okay.
And he's going through some things. This character, his name is Ethan. He suffers from depression, and he really can't get himself going. He's having a tough time getting a job. He doesn't really have any friends aside from one girl that he talks to on the video game system through the PlayStation Network. That he never even met her.
The online girlfriend, as it were.
Yeah, and they're not even romantic. They're really
Oh,
just friends, but it's just like his only human, really, other than his dad, his only human contact is with his pal that he plays video games with. And he's going through a lot, and he's looking for that spark in life. Meanwhile, his father, played by Fred Sullivan, who we've also talked about on the show, veteran actor, really talented guy. We're going to go into him a little bit later on. But Fred plays my father, Big Ethan, and Big Ethan is a florist who is also going through some issues. And those issues are he's suffering from early onset dementia.
wow.
So he's, a young, fairly young guy. He's in his, early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, and he's already kind of suffering from these memory issues and, all sorts of kind of problems that are getting in his way. So we've got these two guys that are kind of getting into some issues in life. Oh, and then there's the big secret that we
Okay.
found out in episode 1. This whole time, young Ethan thought his father was this kind of, happy-go-lucky florist, when in actuality, we learned that the flower shop is really just a front for an assassin squad of sorts. His father is actually a hitman.
Interesting.
So he learns that after all this time, the wonderful lifestyle that his dad was able to provide for him wasn't exactly from all those flower arrangements. It was from a little bit of the human removal service, if you will.
Human recycling, right?
Yes, and the storyline kind of weaves a little bit deeper than that. Again, Glenn and I wanted to make something that was unique, but we also kind of picked and pulled from a lot of different programs and movies that we like. So, we wanted to have this spin where these assassins aren't like regular assassins. They don't just kill people for money. It's not just like, oh, you want your ex-husband killed, or you want your wife taken out because she's cheating on you, or you want that insurance money. They don't do those kind of things. They don't work with organized crime. They're actually kind of these judge, jury, and executioner vigilante types who scope the scene and look for things like, criminals that often get off, even though that they realize that, everybody knows that they did it.
Right.
Murderers, rapists, child molesters, animal abusers.
Wow.
These are the kind of people that Big Ethan goes after. And there are these benefactors that are willing to spend money to have these people removed. But of course, every story needs some conflict. And where the conflict comes in, there's also a traditional group of hitmen that are a little territorial and don't exactly like the, I guess you could say, virtuistic ways of Ethan and Big Ethan. And they see them as a threat and kind of want them removed. So it becomes this really cool father and son story where, of course, little Ethan says to himself, well, Dad, I'm looking for a job with purpose. I want in. And now his father has to decide, like, oof, do I let my son in on the family business and teach him the ways of the assassin? Or do I just say, no, this isn't for you. You're going to stay as far away from this as possible.
And is it a question, Tommy, that your character of the son is perhaps viewed as not being ready or not being mentally or physically equipped to handle this type of responsibility?
100%. This guy literally, my character sits around the house in sweatpants, eating cereal, playing video games all day, probably toking the occasional bong.
Right.
And his dad knows that. So we're talking life or death situations. This isn't a video game. That's actually a line from the show. Uh, so it's one of those things where we get a little Star Wars in there where we're not sure if Luke's too old to be trained for this mission by Yoda, as things progress.
Let's take this. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, I do have a observation that substitute the daughter for a son and go from comedy to drama, and obviously with a different business. But this sounds kind of like the hard R version of Mr. Birthday.
Yeah, you know what? There might be some Mr. Birthday relics in there, but when you watch the show, it is a different palette altogether. But yes, Fred Sullivan is in both programs, so you got that going. But yeah, you
The
need
family business, the passing of the torch from the elder to the junior. Like in this, it's a father and son dynamic. In Mr. Birthday, it's a father daughter dynamic, and also Mr. Birthday with the new Mr. Birthday. But there's
yeah.
nothing wrong with that. There was a famous quote from somebody, Tommy, that as a filmmaker, you're always making the same film over and over again, just presenting it in different ways. So I mean it's okay to have themes.
That's true, but those themes may be accurate, but I think that those are very common themes in any movie. You
Sure.
show somebody progressing through a situation. I promise you, it is nothing like Mr. Birthday.
Well, that was a Dan, whatever his name is, Dan Larson
His name is
movie.
Dan
Anyway.
Hunter, and
Dan Hunter, that's right.
he's probably passed out by a dumpster somewhere in an alley.
Well, Dan Hunter's a good guy too. We should have him on the show sometime. But
if he could ever wake up before noon, we could have him on the show. Let's say hi to some of our And Action faithful here. What's
yes.
up, Kim? How you doing? Good to see you here on this fine. We got a gloomy Tuesday here in Cranston, but I like gloom because today we're going to be talking about The Florist, which has some gloomy moments. Paul, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Welcome to And Action. Ariana, the Fred multiverse.
That's funny. That's
Let me
funny.
tell you something. I think Fred counted last week, because Fred and I have this little tradition. It's
Sure.
it's not a crazy tradition. We take a selfie every time we work together. Like almost every day that he's on set, we're gonna grab a quick selfie.
Sure.
We catalog these, and it's funny because we've been doing this now for years. You can actually see some goddamn wear in the old face, if you will, and you could flip through them like a flip book, and it's like, holy shit, I'm getting old. You can see all different hairstyles, different facial hair. It's pretty funny to see. But Fred and I have done like 20 something projects together.
Oh, that's great.
Like 21. This was like the 22nd project that we've done together.
And that's not including the stage work too, right?
He might have included that, but my point is, we've just done so much together, yet we've never actually acted together.
Okay.
I directed him many times. He directed me in a play one time, but we've never been on the same side of the camera. And I'll tell you, I was a little intimidated because Fred's a really, really talented actor. And acting is sort of like fighting sometimes. And I know you're gonna be like, what do you mean by that? And it's like, well, it's like a boxing match. It's like, you're in the ring with that person. And the performance that you give is also kind of reliant on the performance that they give. If someone's really, really good and you're okay,
right,
the whole scene's going to fall flat because it's just going to look odd. The editor is going to be forced to rely on the more talented person, and the cuts aren't going to be all consistent. So, I found that anytime I'm in a scene with a really good actor, fight or flight kicks in, and I'm just naturally like, okay, don't fuck this up.
Right.
You make yourself sure. You make sure you're a little more on point. You make sure that you have all of your lines memorized. You're completely off book. So it was fun working with Fred. And, believe it or not, a lot of people watching this show might not realize this, but when you work on a movie or a TV show, unless we're talking like a big budget studio show or a network program, you never get to rehearse. Like rehearsals really aren't a thing.
Right.
You know, very rarely. I've been doing this for a long time, and I think that maybe I could count them on one hand the amount of times when we've done like an actual, even just a table read before the movie.
Right.
I think that comes as a big surprise to a lot of actors who are new at this. They say to themselves, like, "Oh, when are rehearsals?" Especially if you come from a theater background, you're just used to rehearsing all the time.
Yeah.
There's no rehearsals in independent, low budget independent filmmaking. It doesn't really happen unless the actors take it upon themselves to say, "Hey, let's hop on a Zoom and read this scene a few times. Hey, why don't you meet me at my place, or we'll run this scene, or we'll find a coffee shop, whatever." That's kind of the extra effort that you have to put in sometimes, and it can be difficult geographically. Sometimes you're not in the same town as the other actors, but again, we've got these wonderful tools like Zoom to cut that middleman out. Um, but I highly recommend, like, if you're in anything, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. I rehearsed with Fred about we did about 3 sessions, and I'm not talking like long backbreaking sessions. They were probably about 2 or 3 hours each session. We read our, several scenes over and over again, just repetition. And it really helped. And initially, not to turn this into a scene study talk, but like the first time we sat, I don't even think we read the scene more than once or twice actually. We just kind of talked about it. We looked at each scene. We talked about like, okay, what's happening in this scene? What are we trying to do here? Like what's the
Motivations. What's our motivations? What's my character looking to do? What's your character looking to do?
Yeah, and looking for any kind of clues. Again, I'm gonna mention this maybe because I've been on a forensic files kick. I love me a good murder show, but you kind of have to be the detective a little bit when you're an actor. You've got to read that script really tightly and just figure out all the little clues. And if a writer writes something, for the most part, unless they're not that great of a writer, but the good writers, like, there's not a wasted fucking word. Like,
Right.
every fucking word that they put in that script is there as some kind of an indication to the actor or the production folks to be like, hey, pay attention to this because it's important for the story. Like, every word in the script is designed to service the story. So, as a quick tip for you writers out there, if every word isn't pushing your story forward and servicing it, if you're just telling me fluff, cut that shit out of there. So back to this, I rehearsed several times with Fred, really really helpful. So again, I know I'm not inventing the wheel here, but like,
Right.
please 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 do yourself a favor. If you're cast in anything, try to reach out to whoever your scene partner is and rehearse a few times before. You're going to be glad you did.
Well, Tommy, let me jump in there for a second. It's always amazed me that for, community theater or any type of theater, people will rehearse, usually unpaid rehearsal, 5 days a week for 3 or 4 weeks. And then it's, oh, we've got 2 weekends worth of shows, or we've got, if you're lucky, 4 weeks worth of shows. And they've done all this rehearsal, and then when it comes to independent film or even major blockbuster films, like you said, there's very little rehearsal. To me, that's totally backwards, because at least with live theater, if you've got 6 or 8 or 20 shows, you're building upon each night, like you're rehearsing in progress, right? But if you're capturing for film or video or TV or even web series, you don't have time to play around, because you're literally capturing on image video permanently. And I never understood, Tommy, why people don't see that and rehearse. And I'm really glad you mentioned the Zoom thing. I started doing that in 2018 with a short film called The Impeccable. One of the actors involved, I was the director, one of the actors was kind of like, what is this, what are we doing? And I'm like, no, trust me, when we film this whole short film in one day instead of 2 or 3, you're going to be thankful. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm glad you mentioned the Zoom or the Skype. We're using StreamYard here today for our broadcast, but I'm glad you mentioned the rehearsal thing. And especially with technology, make technology your friend, not your adversary these days.
Yeah, it's very important. And the other thing that you get out of the rehearsal process is, when you're reading the script, you might have an idea that's really great. I mean, I'm not trying to say that Fred and I rewrote all of our lines, because that's not true. But I would say almost every scene that we did together, there was one spontaneous moment or kind of improv beat that kind of came about from us just reading it a dozen, 2 dozen times in a row. Whereas, like, had we just showed up on day one and read the scenes, maybe we would have came up with it. Maybe not, though, because we hadn't been so, submerged or, uh, just like, you know, owning the material.
Locked in,
Yeah,
as the kids say.
like you might not make that choice because you're just worried about like saying the words right at that point. So yeah, that was a great process. But let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about kind of the evolution of this thing.
Sure.
Glenn and I started writing this last about a year ago. I remember because I was working on a movie and I remember just having a little bit of downtime. I was acting in a film that was like going for 3 weeks, but I only worked like one day. And I was just feeling like in a little bit of a rut and kind of just like, man, I got to get something going. I was also really trying to get my YouTube channel off the ground at that point. That was about a year ago is when I really focused on like putting daily content out, making a lot of short videos and things like that. So I said to myself, well, it'd be really cool if I had like a web series to kind of feature on my channel. And at first, Glenn and I just planned on making it with our phones, to be honest with you, like really down and dirty. Like shoot this on iPhones, couple lights, very minimal sound gear, and really just make this with when I say like a low budget, I mean like, okay, we're gonna raise like $1,000 just so that we can pay people to eat for a couple days and just see who wants to come and play, kind of a thing. As we check in with Andres, what's up, brother?
Nice guy. He celebrated a birthday a few weeks ago, and he's been doing some things for us with promotion and promoting his own career as well. So Andres is a great viewer, part of the family here.
Yeah, and always quick with a really nice emoji coupling combination. We appreciate that. Thank you for all you've done to share and get the word out for us, Andres. So yeah, it's one of those things where like we didn't think it would be that big of a deal. We kind of just thought that we were going to shoot this on our phones and
Right.
have some fun, try and make something we were proud of. And then some time went by, and this was the side project. So like, it's not something that we were working on constantly. There were a lot of like lulls. There were a lot of moments when like we went away from it for a little while. Uh, and then I got the idea to, what, like, hey, this script's pretty good. Glenn and I started to really like work on the script and hone it in. And it got to the point where we said to ourselves, like, this is pretty good. Like, maybe it is worth us kind of just taking the temperature and seeing if there's any takers out there, any people who would want to spend some money on this and invest in what we're doing. The idea that we could cut out the middleman. And let me kind of, without going into the weeds, explain what I mean by that. When you make a movie, you have to sell it to a market and you go through a distributor. And that's, let's face it, a middleman. They're the middleman. And the distributor is always going to take their end. They're always going to get their money first. And for the most part, it can be challenging, especially when you're new and you don't have a lot of leverage. So we decided to kind of self-distribute this and say, you know what? Let's not deal with a distributor. It's sort of an experiment. And we were able to convince a few of our investors, like, hey, listen, we've got this kind of new approach. Not saying we invented it, but a lot of people are doing it where they're taking their content and they're putting it directly to a streaming platform like a Vimeo. And they're offering affordable downloads for the content where, you can download an episode for $1.99 and watch an episode, and you support it like you'd support anything else. And it's a whole process of this middleman that you can cut out. Now, obviously, that comes with its own challenges because then you don't have the marketing power of a machine like a distributor behind you. You have to find your own unique ways to market your project. You have to find different avenues to get people to say, oh, what's this? Yes, I'd be willing to spend $2 to watch this. And really, I feel like more and more people are so conditioned to just click something on their phone and pay a couple bucks for something that, for the price of You can't even, some places you can't even get a cup of coffee for $1.99.
This was like $3.50 today, buddy.
There you go. So it's like, I think people are getting more and more accustomed to just like wanting that immediacy, like, oh, this is something I want to watch. $2, okay. So that's kind of the direction that we're going in. Again, it's still kind of new. It's got its challenges. I'm not saying that it's going to be a home run for us, but I think that we could get a double, maybe get some people on base, knock some runners in. We've got a really kind of great cast, which I'm going to get into now. And part of that is, I knew that, okay, if we're going to be self-distributing this, we're going to need an anchor of some kind. And for me, that anchor was Tommy Dreamer, who we've talked about on the show. We've done a whole
Sure.
episode dedicated to Tommy Dreamer. And, Tommy, aside from just being an incredibly talented guy, he's trustworthy and he's reliable. And I know that if I look him in the eye and say, like, hey, Tommy, when it comes time to promote this, I'm going to really need to lean on you to help me get the word out. I can trust and know that he's going to do that, and he's going to tweet about it, and he's going to post about it on his Instagram. And, we've talked about it before, but to remind everyone, the guy's got almost 1 million followers if you combine all of his platforms. So, again, these are some unique, different strategies that we have in place to get the word out there.
Tommy, let me just, for those that didn't see our Tommy Dreamer episode, Tommy Dreamer is a professional wrestler. He achieved fame around 1994 in Extreme Championship Wrestling. He was one of the pioneers of that wrestling group. He worked for WWE for many years, World Wrestling Entertainment, of course. He's had action figures made to represent him. He's worked with you, Tommy DiNucci, I believe, since your second film, Army of the Damned. Is that correct? And he's just a guy that, if you're a wrestling fan or if you're a horror movie fan at this point, you probably know who Tommy Dreamer is. And this is a guy that you've worked with several times. And, he's very reliable, and you guys are good together when you work together.
Yeah, he really is. And, he got to play a really unique character. He plays the leader of the rival Hitman faction in this one. So it was a cool part. Came up suited and booted, looking sharp as ever, and it was really great to have him on and have him be a part of this program. And then the rest of the cast, really top to bottom, just really talented people. I worked with an actor by the name of Kenneth Ransom out of Boston, who I've never worked with before. So it's always fun when you can get a new actor in the mix. Really talented guy, awesome voice, like great command of his voice. He plays a character by the name of Albert, which is kind of funny because when we originally wrote the script, his name was Gerald, but then we scouted locations and we found this amazing flower shop. My dear friend Jeff is a florist, and him and his father run this terrific shop in Lowell, Massachusetts, and I can't thank him enough. This kind of phrasing happens all the time, but like, we literally could not have made this pilot without Jeff. And, him and his father opened their doors for us, and we just got so much production value out of shooting there. But, we show up to scout the location, and we see this really great sign out front, Flowers by Albert. And Glenn and I just look at each other and we're like, all right, I guess we're changing Gerald's name to Albert. And we were like, okay, great.
So that's the name. For anyone near Lowell, Massachusetts, stop by Flowers by Albert and support them as they supported this pilot. Very interesting stuff, Tommy. Now, Tommy, what you just filmed last week, it might be splitting hairs, but are you calling that a pilot or episode 1 or both? Because sometimes that gets confusing for even me. When you see the first episode, is it the pilot or is it episode 1 or is episode 1 the pilot? What's your take on that?
This is going to be its own ball of wax, and I'll tell you why. We're doing a very unique two-pronged attack on this movie, where I'm going to take it, the script was about 24, 25 pages.
Is it a series or a movie?
It's a series.
Okay, you just said, yeah.
So the script was 24, 25 pages. Yeah, sometimes I call it a movie. Forgive me if I do.
Because you're so used to making movies, right? But it's a series.
Time in any kind of episodic.
Right.
So this is going to be a series, but we're doing this kind of two-pronged approach where it's a 24-page script, which roughly means 25 minutes or so, 24, 25 minutes on screen, which is about your standard half an hour episodic show. But we're going to break it up. We're going to do two things. We're going to present it as a 25 to 28 minute pilot episode, which I will basically package and hand off to my agent over at Sovereign and see if there's any bites, see if anybody wants it, go through all the traditional paths to see if a network or a platform would be interested in getting involved in the Florist.
Right.
Now, while that's going on, in concert with that, you never get to say in concert.
Yeah, right. In
Only,
Beethoven with this, yes.
well, I like it when it's like, the police, the state police were working in concert with the FBI.
Yes, the local authorities in concert with.
I like it when police authorities work in concert.
Yeah.
For a bunch of guys with guns and sunglasses, but like playing air guitar. I don't know. Anyway, the idea is to also put it out as a web series. So we'll take that 25-minute, 26-minute chunk, cut it up into 3 parts, and serve 7 to 8 minute episodes. So that's the plan. It's a little out there. I told you.
It's not that out there. I get it. I understand. So basically, for the online audience, 8 minutes is much more digestible than 24. And if somebody likes the first 8, they're very likely to come back for the second installment of 8 and the third installment of 8. But for your TV network possibilities, your streaming services, your Netflix, Amazon Primes, etc., you want to show that you're not just capable of making 8 minutes, you're capable of making an entire pilot episode of the standard 25 minutes. I think that's pretty understandable, buddy.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because when we were writing the show, we intentionally, wrote it with the intent of, okay, every 7 or 8 pages, we want to have a cliffhanger moment of sorts. Whereas the actual program itself, like towards the end, ends on a cliffhanger as well. So either way you slice it, whichever episodes, whether you're watching the segmented short versions or you're watching the full pilot, it's going to leave you wanting more. We hope that's the plan, at least, Mikey.
Hey, Tommy, if the viewers, Kim or Ariana or Paul, can let us know if my audio is good this week. I am trying to get the best possible audio. I don't want to be speaking too loudly or too softly. So if someone can comment on that. But Tommy, one thing that I've got to ask you is, you're a very busy guy with a lot of projects. And one thing, I guess, as your friend, I would be concerned about with you is when you've kind of carved out your time for the Florist, was there any apprehension for you to carve out that time because you didn't know if a feature film possibility or a screening or some type of script development opportunity would kind of pop in out of nowhere and throw your scheduling a monkey wrench? Was there anything like that going on, or were you able to, commit to this and not be bothered by anything else going on?
Well, the nice thing about the Florist was, like I told you, it was 3 days. We shot the whole program in 3 days. So it was a challenge. I've got a movie that I'm prepping in June that, is going to be really exciting. And I'm excited to talk more about that down the road. But, it was just starting to get to the point where I was having to juggle some calls for that, as well as juggle, the production itself. And then, of course, Johnny and Clyde is coming out on Friday. So there were some press things that I had to do. So the timing's never going to be good, right? Timing sucks. It seems like there's some kind of, negative barrier that timing's always, you get called for one part and it's like, you don't get a call for a month. And then all of a sudden there's 2 movies that you got to choose from. So that shit always happens to me.
Right.
So I try not to let it stop me from doing anything, just because I kind of just assume that timing's always going to be a motherfucker and I'm always going to get whacked with something. So it's about just picking things and sticking to them. And then at least then, I didn't know that, it was a reasonable enough excuse if I told somebody hey, I'm filming a pilot on these dates, really not going to be able to get to the phone or, get to an email. I'm off the grid. So again, I think that's reasonable, especially if, we're not talking about disappearing for 2 or 3 weeks. We're talking 2 or 3 days. So that helped a lot. The fact that, to answer your question, yeah, that was something that I was concerned with. But knowing that I only had to do it for 3 days, it was helpful. And here's the thing, too, man. In the beginning, this was just like I was going to raise $1,000, $2,000 and just shoot it myself, literally on my phone, and just cut it at my own pace and really make it this little pet project. But then I started raising money, and I'm not going to tell you how much I raised. It's really only the business of the investors at this point. But once there's money on the line, like legitimate money
Right.
that people that I trust and care about have given me to do a project, it was easy for me to say, "Hey, world, back off. I've got a job to do over the next week," because these people gave me their money. And
Yeah.
that's one thing about me, man. Like when people give me their money, like I take that shit very seriously. Um, because I realize that to put money into a creative entity, that's a lot of trust that they're giving me. It's kind of like, "Hey, yeah, hi. Yeah, I've got this idea. It's all in my head. I wrote it down. Well, I need to actually make it, and it's going to cost a lot of money. Will you give me some of that money to make this idea?" When I have that conversation, and obviously it's a lot more complicated than that, that person's really like putting their stock in me. So it's easy for me to kind of block everything out to make sure that we take care of those people and do right by them.
Well, whether it's $500, 5,000, 50,000, half a million, or 5 million, it's still money, and it's like you said, it's an investment. But give yourself some credit, buddy. You made Vault, you made Almost Mercy, various projects with actors, famous and not so famous, that have been successful. So give yourself some credit for that. And Johnny and Clyde, Cinco de Mayo, and it will be available on all streaming services. So it's actually this Friday that people can see one of your newest works with Megan Fox, among others.
I appreciate that shout out. And, we're definitely going to be going into Johnny and Clyde in full form next week. That's going to be our topic. So I appreciate chatting about that. And don't worry, we're going to really tell the story of Johnny and Clyde next week, as we've got some Police in concert here by Ariana. Very nice. We got the lead singer there. We got a saxophone player.
Oh, the In Concert, very good.
The Police and Cops in concert this Friday.
I
Coming
think
later.
Johnny Barnes and Ariana put over my audio, so I appreciate that.
Kim says your audio is great. Johnny said that your audio is better than mine. I probably should invest in some kind of a microphone at some point.
If you, Johnny's on my Christmas list now, or Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa, whatever you want, Johnny. Let me know.
Johnny is a terrific guy, and you didn't work on that music video. You weren't in town. Johnny and I made a great music video not too long ago.
I think Kim Kaling might have stepped in and said hello for that one.
Yes. Hey, what's up, Steven?
Stephen E. What's up, brother?
He says, "Congrats on the Florist. Thank you very much."
Hello. I forgot to give Stephen my weekly reminder, so I'm glad that Stephen tuned in.
Yeah.
Tommy, you mentioned your cast. I don't know if you want to get into that next.
I do. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good place to go. So, we worked with Fred Sullivan on this. He played my dad. We chatted about that. Fred really, he really comes correct in terms of like, again, this wasn't a big budget movie. So or TV series, I'm sorry. There I go again, calling it a movie. So we had to do everything we could to add that production value, right down to putting together the wardrobe looks, and Fred bringing, trunks of clothing, like literally like black garbage bags just filled with clothing. And our costume designer, Courtney, was just like, really working closely with him to put together these looks and make sure that, again, the wardrobe can really tell a story. You can tell the difference between something low budget and something, that some effort was put in by just as simple as the clothing that the characters are wearing. Do they tell a little bit of a story? Are they adding without really being distracting? So it was really cool to see that level of dedication, right from the words that he said, the clothes that he brought. He made this character his own. Next, we talked about Kenneth Ransom, really great guy out of Boston. We'll definitely be working together again. Always fun to switch it up. I work with a lot of the same actors often, but I do enjoy kind of hearing how someone else plays that instrument, hearing a different sound. They get a little different sound out of that instrument. So it's nice to work with new people. And then we had Scout Lyons, who plays my internet pal. Scout's a really talented actor who's just, really trying hard to kind of come into her own. She's been training for a long time, and I think this is a great part for her to kind of showcase her skill set. Really fun character that she gets to play. She wears this wild electric blue wig, which is kind of fun. Fun, like gamer girl type character.
She's also a pop singer. I believe she's got a song called "Do Your Own Thing" or "It's Your Thing," something like
Do
that.
My Thing. I think it's
Do
called
My Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the rest of the cast. We've got Tom Glenn's in this one. Tom Glenn's one of my really good friends. We met on the set of a movie called not Altitude. What was it called? It's a submarine movie that we did. I'm gonna have to Black Water.
Okay.
Or it's either called Black Water or Black Wake. It's kind of funny. In the same summer, one summer I did two movies, both involving the water. One's called Black Water, one's called Black Wake, and I often get them confused. I have a small part in each one of them. But Tom Glenn and I worked together on one of those movies, and we had a blast doing it, and we've been friends ever since. And Tom just has this really like badass look. Like if you need someone to look tough and really like doesn't have to do a whole lot, just kind of looking at him, you're like, whoa, who's this guy? That's who Tom Glenn is, and that's what this part required. So he was really great.
Tom's spent some time in Florida, correct? Is that the same Tom I'm thinking of? Redheaded Tom?
That is correct. Tom is a Floridian.
We won't hold that against him.
He's a Southern man, and we love him. And it was really cool to have him here. And then, of course, we worked with Claudio Orefici, who's my Italian-American friend.
Yes.
Really terrific guy, great actor. It was really cool to see both him and Tom and Tommy Dreamer. Those are guys that I've worked with for many years. I've kind of seen them in front of the camera for a while now. And I got to say, man, I always thought they were good. But the other night watching them work together, I was like, man, these guys are getting pretty fucking good.
Nice.
Like I saw like a jump. Like I saw like an increase in their ability. Whereas, hey, like anything else, if you do this long enough, you're going to get better. And it was nice to see that improvement. I was pleasantly surprised because I already knew it was going to be a good scene. And then to see Tom, Claudio, and Tommy Dreamer just kind of like come out and carve this scene up, I was like, all right, men, nicely done.
Well, that's great. And, it sounds like a really good team here based on some of the names. And Tommy, the shoot was, did you say it was in Massachusetts? Was the whole thing shot at the actual Alberts?
No, I'll get into it. I forgot a couple people I just want to mention too. We had Michael Zuccola on this movie.
Oh, yes. Yes, Michael's
Zuccola,
very good.
Another one of those guys that's like in almost every one of my movies. He's super fucking talented. He's wildly funny, but he can also be very smarmy and very creepy and, can play these kind of like, real like skeevy characters very well, very sleazy on camera if he needs to be. And I love characters like that.
He can crawl under your skin, so to speak.
Yeah. So he's super talented, and also just like he gives the crew a big shot in the arm. Like, again, I've worked with these people a lot. So when Mike shows up on set, everyone gets a little, the laughter is in the air a little bit more. So I liked working with him. Also, Scout's sister, Tess Lyons, was in this. She played a really cool part. Fun sister tandem, both getting in the Florist. And then a really great performance turned in by the other Mike Messier. Yes, folks, I know it's hard to bring up on this show, and Mike might get some kind of weird feedback in his headphones. But there is, in fact, another Mike Messier.
Yeah.
He's also an actor, really great guy. And, he was also a producer on this one and supported the project from day one. One of our first people to kind of get behind it. So we appreciate working with him. Mike played a police officer in this movie, or there I go again. I can't help it. Played a police officer in this TV show and he was really great to work with. And
And is that the same Mike Messier that has his name on a plaque at the Warwick Showcase Movie Theater? Is that the same Mike?
I would assume so. I know
Yeah.
he's worked at that theater for many years, so that makes sense.
They've actually got his name on a plaque in there. He's done such good work for them. I've actually posed with that plaque and take credit for his hard work.
I can't
So
believe that. You are such a scoundrel for doing that.
I mean, I've got the .com. So I mean, Tommy, this is really a good cast you got together here. And can I ask? I don't mean to jump the gun, but once you knew that you were going to do this, like who was your first phone call? Was it to Fred? Was it to get the location? What was like the first phone call, first email, first? How did that get going?
I think the first phone call was probably to Fred to make sure that he was available. I knew he was into it because it's like putting together a team. You want to make sure that you got a couple of, he was going to be in just about every scene, so we needed him locked down. And then I'd say like up towards the top of my first call list, when we realized that okay, we've raised enough money to actually shoot this now. The first call was to the florist, to my buddy Jeff, and just saying, "Hey Jeff, Jeff's a really cool guy. We actually met at a wrestling show in Lowell, Massachusetts, watching Tommy Dreamer wrestle. Like, how weird is that? Many years ago, I remember it was Nick Principe's birthday. We've mentioned him on the show before. Nick, my friend John Del Ponte, we also mentioned.
JDP.
Nick, JDP, and I get in the car, and we just drove to Lowell, Massachusetts to watch a TNA show, and we watched Tommy Dreamer. And it's kind of funny because while we were at the show, a guy named Jeff kind of recognized Nick Principe. Now, Nick Principe is about 6'6", so
Chrome Skull.
he's a big bastard. He's got a unique look. He stands out in a crowd. And Jeff said, "Hey, are you Nick Principe?" And Nick's like, "Yeah, I mean, Nick has some fans, and Nick was in a movie called Laid to Rest, which, believe it or not, in the horror world has quite a few fans, a big fan base. So Jeff is a horror fanatic. So Jeff was like, "You're Nick Principe," and he was like, "Yeah, hey, how are you? Oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. I love Laid to Rest." We started chatting with this guy, kind of hit it off. I did a convention a few months later. We saw him there again, and we just became buddies, And then with the power of Facebook, we've been friends for like 10 years plus. So it wasn't. It's weird. As much as like Jeff and I never really hung out or anything, but it didn't feel weird calling him because we like each other's posts for the last 10 years. So I just reached out to him and said, "Hey man, I got this show. I know you're big into movies. Jeff is also an actor and really trying to get his foot into the movie world." So I was like, "I know you're interested in this stuff. What do you say? Can I send you the script? Do you think you want to shoot this at your place?" And of course, low budget production here. Didn't have big money to give him for a location fee or anything like that. He did it out of the goodness of his heart and wanting to be a part of this project and wanting to support what we're doing. And they opened up the doors for us, and we shot there for one day. Again, it was a 3-day shoot. So we shot one day at the flower shop. Day 2, we shot at a gun range, which was a lot of fun, which I'll get into that in a little bit. And then day 3, we shot in a parking lot. And then every other, and we shot at the parking lot, then we'd go back to my house. And we shot the majority of this at my house in Cranston. So you got to use, that's a tip for like any producers out there. You're trying to stretch your dollar. Don't be ashamed to use every fucking asset that you have. You got a house, you should be shooting in the house. Your friend's got a truck that they can rent you or a van or whatever. You better borrow that shit. You got to beg, borrow, and steal when you're working with these lower budgets, and just take advantage of any potential asset that you may have or that a friend might have. And don't be afraid to ask because there still are people that get really excited about making movies. So got the flower shop locked. And then I had to crew it up, and the kind of cool thing about this project was, Glenn and I have worked with a lot of the local crew, and we knew that like, okay, well, let's get some of our like top guys in there if we can. Hired Chris By, who's a DP who's done the cinematography for both myself and Glenn on a couple of the last movies that we directed. So we're thick as thieves, the three of us. We all speak the same kind of language. Michael Flynn came in, who's a really great first AC, keeps everything sharp and in focus. And then I had this really great art team. It was kind of fun, like Gianna and Gina, who I haven't worked with in a long, long time. We last worked together on a show called The Manor, which I think if you go into the archives, you can hear all about The Manor. But we're talking a long time ago. And I called them up because I wanted to kind of, freshen it up a little bit and work with some people that I knew were local and trustworthy and I could get the job done. And they kind of came in and crushed it, man. Like I loved working with them. Mentioned Courtney Gouen. She came in to do the costumes, put in so much work and so much effort. Just kind of, again, a lot of costumers just go in and make sure that everyone's got clothes. Okay, great.
Right.
You got something to wear. Awesome. That fits. Awesome. Great. You happy with it? Cool. Courtney really tried to, embrace the idea of telling the story with the clothes, making sure that each piece of clothing, for example, Big Ethan is a florist. So he's going to wear colorful clothing. His tie is going to have a cool floral pattern, khaki pants and buttoned up and everything. And my character's a slob. So we made sure that like we actually tell a little story with my clothing where in the beginning of the episode, I'm wearing all sweatpants and I'm wearing hoodies and I'm kind of a bum. And as the show goes on, you can slowly see my character put a little more effort into the clothing that he wears. Oh, it starts with a nice t-shirt and pants. Oh, and then he's got a polo shirt on and jeans. And then, oh, wow, suddenly by the end of the show, he's making an effort to be a working part of humanity and look like presentable. So, again, those are really cool, unique things that Courtney did with the costumes in this show, telling that story a little bit. But again, like I said, not making it a distraction. Like for
Right.
example, we had a couple of, this was fun from a costume standpoint. We had a couple of flashback scenes where we go back to the mid 90s. And, immediately, like when you do a flashback scene, clothing's important. It tells you where you are, it tells you the tone, sets the tone. It's the time machine, right? So you can also make the mistake though of going too big where you pick such loud clothing of the period that it becomes a cartoon and it becomes a caricature. And now I'm distracted because I'm looking at the silly 90s track jacket instead of what's going on in the scene. Uh,
Right.
so we didn't go full blown episode of 90210 with the 90s flashback, but we made sure to, you know, get those appropriate certain types of denim wash and certain types of jackets that people would wear in that era, a certain type of a hat maybe. So just we told story, but it wasn't distracting. So she was terrific. Of course, Joe Cantor, my dear friend, our old sound wizard, dusted off the microphone and came on down. I've worked with Joe for many years. He was the sound person on my very first movie, so it's always like home cooking whenever I get to work with Joe. And we usually traditionally like to have a little breakfast. At the end of the show, we had our little traditional breakfast in the morning. And I know there's other people that I'm not thinking of. Amanda Pepin, uh, she is a super talented hair and makeup artist, but also did the special effects on this program. And
Yes.
man, there's some beautiful flowers and some grisly deaths in this movie. You get a little something for the whole family, and I'm excited about the effects that Amanda did. I don't want to have any spoilers, but a lot of people get taken out in pretty grisly ways, and even Amanda does a cameo death in this movie, which is kind of fun.
You know what I like about both Joe and Amanda, Tommy, is that neither one of them have come out of retirement or retired. They've just consistently worked. They haven't announced their retirement only to unretire 6 months later. So I give them both credit for that.
No, they've just been consistently doing their thing, and it's also kind of funny because here's what I didn't tell you: they all stayed at my house for the most part.
That's a lot of people, buddy.
I
Was
had
there?
there was one night where I think I had 6 or 7 people staying at my house. But you know what? It was fun, man. And like, it's so funny. Like times change. Like I remember when I was younger and making movies and, everyone would shoot for 12 hours and then we'd party our faces off all night long. But when you're getting a little older, that stuff doesn't happen as much. You might have that one nightcap drink. You might have one shot with the boys to kind of chat about it. But then at the end of the night, I'm like, all right, I'm going to bed. I
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
sleep. Let's see what everyone's saying over here in And Action World.
Stephen E's got some good comments.
And Tommy, yeah, we did make an awesome music video. That's Johnny Barnes.
I do have a life lesson about casting, Tommy. When we have a chance, I have a little bit of a rant in me. It's not too
Oh boy.
long.
All right, well, let's finish up the florist, and then you can get into your rant.
Thanks.
Mike, LOL, love you guys, love you too, man. It was
The
really
NWO, Mike Messier.
really
Yes.
appreciate everything you did, and I hope that the two Mike Messiers can someday coexist. Because I really,
If we shake hands, the universe explodes.
yeah, because I think you guys would really like each other. You're both big movie buffs. You're both big wrestling fans. I'm telling you, there's a lot more in common than just the same first and last name.
It's like the Spider-Man GIF or GIF.
Yeah, exactly. Where the two guys looking at each other.
Right?
Wrestling brings people together. That's a fact, Steven. Tommy DiNucci's group home. Yeah, it was definitely like it was a frat house of sorts.
We need to get a sign like the vault sign. Tommy DiNucci's group home.
Yeah, speaking of which, I broke my vault sign, and it's
wow.
it's been repaired, and I'm gonna pick it
Okay.
up this week.
Good. Glad to hear that.
A couple more people I want to mention. Jim Vitale was our gaffer. Nelson, our grip. Those guys were just like Johnny on the spot the whole show. So awesome team, man. I you know, and obviously, like I said, just working with Glenn, who's really like a brother. You know. Oh, and it was really cool working with Alex Soderberg. Was our associate producer on this movie. I did it again.
Series
TV show
pilot.
series. Alex Soderberg really stepped it up. It's kind of funny, you know. I've been working with Alec for many years, and he's done a little bit of everything. From he's worked in the office during Johnny and Clyde. He was an office PA, which those guys do. You know, they're the real like kind of they're in the engine room, if you will, doing a lot of the things that people don't see happen on set takes place in the office. Really important stuff. Everything from getting paperwork out, getting all of the scripts out to different actors, and you know the machine would fail miserably without the office. So Alex done a little bit of that. He's also been a boom operator, so he's been on set, and that's kind of a rigorous position. So I knew Alec could handle a little bit of everything, and I brought him on as our associate producer on this. Which, if you're wondering, what does an associate producer do? Well, on a project like this, a little bit of everything. Like
Right.
whatever, what do they do? They do whatever we need to get done. And I remember having the conversation. Glenn and I talked with Alec a week before we shot. We're just like, listen, man, you know, a lot needs to be done. Some of these jobs are going to seem kind of menial and thankless, and some of them are going to be very creative and fun and fulfilling. But the reality is, we just don't have a lot of people on this one, and we need everyone to kind of wear a lot of different hats. And Alec was just like, whatever you need, you know, and he wore about 1,000 hats during those 3 days and got it all done and made sure that we ran like a clock. And I got to say, you know, like when my head hit the pillow, whatever it was Wednesday night when we finished, I really did just kind of close my eyes and was just like so thankful that like everything went so fucking smooth. Like there were seriously no injuries, nobody got hurt, nobody got their feelings hurt. There were no
Right.
fights on set that, you know, couldn't be resolved pretty quickly.
No confessional scenes like the real world where someone had to bare their soul and talk just straight to the camera.
No, just like really great people that came together to, you know, get this thing done. And let me tell you, you know, normally you work 12 hours and then you go into overtime. And this wasn't that kind of a show. We didn't have the budget for it. There were many a nights when we were knocking on hour 13, hour 14, and yeah, kind of feeling bad. Like I don't want to abuse the crew here, but like, oh, guys, can you just hang out for like one more shot? Can we get this thing done? And everybody was just like, yeah, let's get it done. So, you know, there were some nights when we started our day at 11 a.m. and didn't finish till 1 a.m. You know, we like
Right.
really, we fucking cranked to get this thing done in 3 days.
Hey,
So
Tommy, do you have an editor locked in for this? Are you?
I do. That's it. I'm glad you mentioned it because I forgot to mention him. Mike Braga, my assistant for many years now, a couple of years. He's stepping up and learning how to do a lot of new tricks. You know, one of them, he's always been a great editor, but he's going to be editing this project. And also, he did DIT on this show, which, if you don't know what
Title.
DIT is, yeah, DIT is basically the person who takes all of the footage from the camera and stores it on a hard drive and backs it up into the computer so that that shit isn't going to go into the wind. when we finish. So it's a very crucial job. Shout out to Mike Flynn for helping Mike Braga along the way. Mike Flynn is a really talented guy, really, really just a cool guy all around, and was willing to kind of show Mike Braga the ways of the force when it came to DITing. So these small projects are great because everybody learns. Oftentimes, we talked about Alec getting a chance to be an associate producer, Mike getting a chance to be a DIT. A lot of times on these smaller projects, you get a chance to play maybe a step above your current position and learn and get out there on the field. It's the best way to learn.
Hey, Tommy, DIT is one of those jobs that nobody notices unless something goes wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then everybody wants to
Kill
chase
the
out of the ground with pitchforks and torches.
There's some Hollywood story about some movie that was left on the top of a car, like the actual film reels back when they had those, and somebody left the film on top of a vehicle and drove off, and the movie was lost forever. But you got to have someone you trust for DIT. And it sounds like a really good thing, Tommy. Is there any ballpark? I know I don't want to rush the process, but I think those that are watching this episode, whether it's in live time on May 2nd, 2023, or if they catch this on a replay, and please subscribe to Tom DiNucci YouTube channel, and of course, One Mike Messier YouTube channel, and One Man in a Camera Films, which is my other one. But Tommy, is there any ballpark when this thing might be released, or is that to be determined?
It's still it's still to be determined. But I will say this: I have a little bit of a goal. I'm going to be traveling to do this movie in June, and my goal is to have at least a cut of the film completed by the time I travel in a few weeks. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks I have a cut. Now, remember, when I say a cut, I don't mean a final cut. I just mean like something from start to finish. And then, it's a big process. We have to do the sound design. We have to do the mix down. We have to do colorization. We have to create a score. So it's going to be a while. I don't really want to stress myself out into a date just yet, but a soft goal, I would say we could hope that by the end of the summer, this thing's ready to rock and everybody can see it.
End of summer, great.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah, we appreciate that. I really, I thank everybody for, supporting the project, whoever was involved. If I missed anyone, I'm terribly sorry. Catering by Luigi's in Johnston, Rhode Island. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a great place.
Yeah,
I used to do dinner theater acting there, buddy. Believe it or not, Murder on Us Dinner Theater. Luigi's was one of our go-to places. Fun place.
Very cool. Yeah, they had some terrific pasta from Luigi's. So it was a great week. Real quick before Mike kicks off his rant, that's a good way for us to close out the show. I just want to briefly go over some Johnny and Clyde points. The movie will be coming out Friday. That's May 5th. As you're watching this, you can check it out on just about all the streaming platforms and on demand. Just punch in Johnny and Clyde. My new thing when I want to watch anything, I literally just go to Google and I go, watch whatever the fuck I'm looking for. And it pops up the 18 different ways that you can watch it. So if you're curious on how to watch Johnny and Clyde, how to get it, I would just wait till Friday, punch in your Google machine, watch Johnny and Clyde, and you'll have several different options, and you can pick the one that best suits your viewing pleasure.
How do we spell Johnny in this title?
It's spelled Johnny.
Okay.
Clyde. And the other thing that I'm really excited about too, if you check out the trailer, this movie, it's kind of funny how movies are marketed. Initially it was marketed as this like kind of dark heist movie, crime drama. But really, that's not what the movie is at all. It's actually very much a satire. It's a dark comedy. It's almost like a love letter to the kind of silly horror movies of yesteryear. And it's cool because the new marketing materials, the new trailers, and the new promotional pieces are kind of leaning it towards that direction. So I'm excited about the movie. Later today, you know what my day is going to consist of, Mike?
Please tell me.
Today, I'll tell you right now. Everyone bear with me.
Today is May 2nd, 5223.
Yeah, today is a big press junket day for me.
It's Loch Ness Monster's birthday today, by the way. 90 years old of Loch Ness Monster sightings.
Is that right?
Yes, so we can all celebrate the 90th birthday of the Loch Ness monster.
Huh.
Although the monster was born before it was sighted, but
Now,
this
is that the date of that famous grainy picture?
nope, that came later, like in the 70s. This was
Gotcha.
1930s.
Oh,
1933 was the first time somebody saw this thing. The
what's the
Loch
name?
Ness monster.
Nessie? Is it Nessie?
I call her Nellie. Just
Nellie.
yeah, I call her Nellie.
That's the name, right? I thought it
Yeah.
was Nellie, but Nessie made so much more
Some
sense.
people some people say Nessie, but I like Nellie. It's a little more savoir faire.
Less on the nose. So here's what I'm doing today, guys. And it's kind of funny because I guess years ago, I know one of my first jobs, I was an intern and I worked a press junket. And basically, they used to rent out a hotel, and the director would go like from room to room. They'd rent like a wing in a hotel or a conference area. And the director and the actors would go room to room to room to room to room. And in each room, there'd be a different press junket. There'd be a different, or I shouldn't say press junket, I'd say press outlet. So you'd go and you'd do the same fucking interview like 19 times with all these different people. So now, thanks to the glory of the internet and Zoom, today I have one, two, three, four. I got 6 interviews all via Zoom booked from 3:30 to 5:30. So basically, like 3:30, I'm jumping on a Zoom. I've got high def digest for a taped audio with Brian Kluger. 4:15 Infamous Horror taped on air camera interview with AJ Fryer. 4:30 horrornews.net taped on camera interview with Janelle Spiegel. 4:45 Movies 365 taped on camera interview with Henry Pham. And then 5 o'clock M&K Productions podcast taped on camera interview with Mac and Kristen. So I got a lot of people to talk to today. I'm excited. We're going to be chatting a lot of Johnny and Clyde. I better maybe take a tablespoon of maybe some olive oil, keep that voice in range.
Well, all those people are great. All their websites are great, except AJ Fryer. He owes me $20. So the rest of them are good people.
Do you actually know that guy?
No.
Really?
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, Tommy.
Well,
But
that
no,
was good acting, Mikey.
I
So
do.
go ahead.
I think just to give a shout out in case any of those 6 people are watching. Thank you for your service in promoting Johnny and Clyde, available this coming Friday, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to everyone about the movie. And I think that's about it, guys. I'm going to let Mike sign us off with this rant. But before I say that, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just tap that subscribe button. It's one little click for your finger, but it means so much to me. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. And, really thank you so much for sharing about the show. Anyone who can take a minute to post this link on their feed, get the word out, let people know that you enjoyed us, our stories, and hopefully everybody learned a little something about the movie world that maybe you can use in your own travel and journey down the path of telling stories.
Well, Tommy, this is just a little rant. I've been asked to help with some casting, basically for some featured background roles. So I've been hitting up people that I know, and also a few people that I don't know. And just based on their photographs, based on their online presence, that they seem to be professional. And I get it, Tommy. Everybody's got to draw a line with what they're willing to do and not do, as far as, I just want to do principal roles or day player roles. But the reality, Tommy, is that especially in places like here I am in Florida or in New England, there's not a whole lot of roles to go around. Like everybody wants to be the star of the movie or the co-star of the movie. But the reality is there's just not that many roles to go around. And a lot of times when productions come to town, they've already got their key principal roles set. So that being said, if someone like myself or if anyone approaches you and says, hey, we've got this featured background role for this, some people I've contacted have kind of shot that down because they're like, well, I only do principal. Well, what they're not realizing is yes, you might just be featured background in this one, but what better way to ingratiate yourself to the filmmakers involved if you agree to do this featured background this time, 6 months from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, when these same filmmakers do another production and they're like, hey, who was that guy that did that featured background, but he had a great look and he was reliable and he showed up or she showed up and didn't give us a hard time about anything. Let's call them and give them an audition for this part with a speaking line. I think the term that I would use, Tommy, is planting seeds. You know, not every single thing you do is going to have the immediate gratification of it's going to make you a movie star right then and there. But if you plant some seeds with these featured background roles, you know, Ricky Lake did one line in the movie Working Girl. Kathy Griffin did one line in Pulp Fiction. There's tons of stories like that. You know, Annie Hall. It was, you know, Jeff Goldblum had one line in Annie Hall that people still talk about. So the point is, don't turn up your nose at these opportunities. I've already had a couple of people turn up their nose at me, and it's like, okay, I know who I'm not calling again, and that's basically it. And here's the other thing with that, Tommy.
Yeah.
When people are looking at, you know, hey, I only do principal. Well, it's like, well, is your name actually selling anything? Like, are people buying a ticket or paying their $2.99 or their $5.99 online streaming to watch a movie that you're in because you're in it? If the answer to that is no, which is 99.999% of us, myself included, then how can you have an ego that you're above doing featured background or one or two lines? So just keep your ego in check. Realize that if you're not, you know, a Hollywood star who's actually in New York or Hollywood making movies that people are paying to see you specifically in, you don't really have the reason to turn your nose away from paying jobs, especially of any kind. Rant
Well,
over.
it sounds like somebody soured you a little bit this last.
No, it's not souring. It's just. I felt this way for a while, Tommy. It's not
Sorry to hear
souring.
that. No, I mean it. I'm sorry to hear that they got you that worked up. But the reality is, you're 100% right. People like that are kind of the typical prototype of the actors that I try to stay as far away from as humanly possible. Because it sounds like anyone who would turn down a really nice featured spot in a film because they feel as though their spot or place in the world is above that, you're dealing with, I want to use my words carefully here, but you're dealing with a really out of touch human being right there. Because, like you said, unless you make acting your living, like if acting is your living, and I mean living, I mean you have no other job, you don't have a rich uncle, mommy and daddy aren't paying for things, and just acting is how you pay your rent, your groceries, how you take your significant other out for dinner. Like if that's your only source of income, then yeah, I can understand being like, oh, I got to protect myself here. I can't do too many of these featured background roles because I'm booking 4 or 5 principal
Sure.
jobs a week or a month, I should say. That's a little week's a little unrealistic. But if you're booking work, yeah, I get it. But I think it's fair to say that 100% of the people that you reached out to are not booking work. Acting is not their primary source of income. And they are still very much in the outside looking in to the
Right.
business. And when you're on the outside looking in, the best way to get in is to get fucking in. And being a featured extra in a movie is in. Because, like you said, the director is going to see you, the producers are going to see you, you're going to be known as a reliable person. And frankly, you're on set. So you can't make any connections bitching and moaning from your apartment, but you can make connections when you're on set. So I support your rant 100%. I do feel bad that they got to you. Don't let them get to you. Fuck those people.
You
And
got to get a jersey before you play in the game, Tommy.
well, here's what's going to happen. The same people that turned you down for this featured extra deal, in 5 years, they're going to be in the same exact spot
Right.
because, you know, everyone's trying to hit the lottery, but the reality is that, you know, again, not to use a baseball reference, but like, yeah, you want to hit a home run, but like sometimes you just got to get on base.
Yeah.
Just get on base. I'll take a walk. Hit me with a pitch, whatever. Just get on base.
And even more specific, Tommy, sometimes it's not about, hey, you're not a good actor enough to have a role. It's that these people have never worked with you specifically before, so they don't know what you're capable of. Why don't you come out and play for a day or two and let them see that you're a good person that we can trust to show up? And that's not an offense to anybody's talent. It's just, if people don't know you personally, even with our technology and our changing world, that personal connection, Tommy, is what it's all about. And it does get frustrating when people don't realize these simple common sense things.
Yeah, it does. All right, guys, I've got to wrap it up. I've got to prep for Johnny and Clyde press week. We've got a lot of people to talk to in a short period of time. So I'm going to go peruse the old IMDb, make sure I got everyone's name down right. Thank you so much for sitting with us and chatting today on this gloomy Tuesday. Couple little shout outs here. Let's see here. Steven says, on the flip side of that, sometimes their agents tell them not to do it. Yeah, that's true. And, you could listen to some crackerjack agent. Most of the people that say they're agent, they're not rep by Paradigm. They're not rep by William Morris.
Right.
Rep by one of the top agencies. They're rep by some, crackerjack who's like, some crackpot. Like, oh, I'm an agent.
Right.
And it's like, what are you really an agent of, aside from nonsense? Ariana says sometimes you have to be hit with a pitch. Hey, we'll take, I'll crowd the plate a little bit just so that I can take one on the elbow, soft spot of the thigh, maybe. Congratulations on Johnny and Clyde. Can't wait. Appreciate that, Steven. Thanks, guys. Where can we stream Johnny and Clyde? Kim, punch watch Johnny and Clyde into your Google machine, and you'll get several different options on where you can stream it. And I do appreciate all your support, as always. Scott says, another great episode. Oh, thank you very much, Scott. All right, well, everyone, have a great week. Pursue your dreams with ferocity and kick some ass for us. And we'll see you next Tuesday when we're going to do a deep dive on Johnny and Clyde. And I hope you get a chance to watch the movie between now and then. We can talk all about it on the show next week. I don't know why I'm waving like this. It's kind of
some type of military
bullet. It's like I'm injured. I'm just going to podcast like this.
You got a trick elbow. It's doing one trick.